The Watership Down podcast is intended for listeners who are familiar with the plot. There will be spoilers. This episode is recorded, edited and narrated by Newell Fisher. It is scripted by Newell Fisher, Erik and Lundy Johnson. Hello, and welcome to the Watership Down podcast episode 130, in which we will be looking at Season 1, Episode 8 of the TV series and Episode 8 of the series overall, Escape from Efrafa. First, though, a bit of borough keeping. First of all, listening figures at the moment do indicate that the podcast has entered its difficult fourth season. I always suspected this might happen when I began going through the TV series, so I'm not too worried for now. But please do spread the word if you know of anyone who you think might enjoy listening to my ramblings. I watched Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 a few days ago. Like all good stories with elements of comedy, it has moments of genuine depth of emotion, among which was Rocket the Raccoon's origin story, which appears in this film and is so sad. In particular for me, the character of Floor, the bioengineered rabbit doe, easily takes the place of the saddest anthropomorphic lapine character of all time. Blackavar's experiences look relatively tame in comparison. She is one of Rocket's first friends during the truly terrible start to his life as an intelligent talking animal at the hands of a villain, the High Evolutionary, who was frankly more glamorous than he deserved. As a villain, he was a summary of the very worst that an intelligent mind is capable of. And Floor, as well as Rocket, Lila and Teefs, are the result of an early batch of his experiments. To quote Lundy Johnson, who commented on my post on this on Facebook, quote, "Her design and characterisation are so great and moving, perfectly orchestrated break the cutie pathos, so some may find it too manipulative, but I was impressed with the thoughtfulness regarding how a rabbit with newfound sapience, but still subject to prey instincts, would react under stress." End quote. Absolutely right. It took me back to the part of Catherine Lester's book about the 1978 film that I reviewed in episode 120, where the subversion of the cute image of rabbits is discussed. Because Floor is no cute rabbit after what has been done to her, but is all the more deserving of our sympathy as a result. Give it a watch if you think you can handle it. She is a relatively minor character really, but in a very important part of the story. The appeal for the Rabbit Welfare Association and Fund is ongoing. Details in the notes. Please give what you can. And I am still showcasing Watership Down themed art. Again, details in the notes. Please let me know if you would like your Watership Down themed art to appear as the podcast title image for an episode, with full credit given. So, before we escape from Efrafa, let's revisit Sandalford Warren. Erik Stepp's Visit to England, Part 3. Day 3, Part 1. Sandalford Warren. Quote, "The second day of visiting locations of Watership Down was the one with the most risk of barely seeing anything. From others I had heard that Sandalford Warren, the place where they cross the Enbourne and the Warren of the Snares, are all on private land. Still, this day should turn out to be a huge success, even if we did some very extreme walking and had to crouch in some heavy undergrowth. Thanks to the innkeeper of the Furze Bush Inn, I got the information that parking near St Gabriel's School in Sandalford Priory, how I originally planned, would not be wise because it is a private school. So I tried out a street that interestingly was called Warren Street. This street leads directly into a footpath which leads right into Sandalford Park, and we were lucky. We found in Warren Street a parking space. Everyone who was also to visit Sandalford, I would also recommend this place to park your car. From then on, it was a short stroll to get into Sandalford Park. This runs once across the park and ends on the A339, but Sandalford Warren is a good distance north of this trail, just beyond a small copse. We tried to go cross-country at that point to shorten the walk, however that turned out to be not so easy. The grove was overgrown with gorse. We had to walk along the grove for a while and look for a passage at a suitable place. This proved to be difficult, and we had to crawl through the thicket before we came out at the place where, according to the map, Sandalford Warren should have been. The area is a very tall growing meadow, with a few trees in between. Fortunately, Sandalford can still be visited in this way because Fiver's nightmarish vision is yet to become reality, and this wildly growing place is not to make way for new houses. Of course, there was no real rabbit warren here. I think for that also the ground is too wet, because the nearby stream, which is also described in the book, there were smaller puddles everywhere. Not actually suitable terrain for rabbits. Maybe there were many rabbits here when Richard Adams was young. Sandalford is near Wash Common. This is where Richard Adams is said to have been born. Anyway, I picked one of the trees here and read another passage. Of course, only Fiver's vision came into question for Sandalford. Then it was time to head for the next destination, which was to be the Enbourne. The direct way back was out of the question, and so we walked in a southeastern direction through the high grass. Here we actually reached the small stream, which is also described in the book, and also a small dirt road, which was obviously used. This I recognised as the place where the notice board would have been in the book, and a fence nearby resembled the place where Fiver had his nightmarish vision of blood in the field in the movie. This path led us north out of Sandalford, and fortunately the gate was open here, so presumably we could have reached Sandalford from the north side as well. Fortunately, another trail led through a nearby copse and ended up taking us across some fields back to the main Sandalford Park trail. Only here we realised that we had unintentionally entered private land. Fortunately, there was not a soul to be seen far and wide. Therefore, we also tried our luck and ran along another path in the direction of Enbourne, despite the warning. After stomping a wee bit through the woods, where the rabbits in the book and movie spend their first night, we arrived at the Enbourne. Before that, we could spot a deer. The Enbourne can hardly be called a river at this point and resembles more of a stream. The place where the rabbits cross the Enbourne is of course hard to find. First, I read here again a passage from the book, of course, Bigwig's spotting of the dog. We followed the Enbourne a short distance before leaving the forest again. Here we then saw a brown hare, so we encountered lapine life here as well. Via a path we came back to the main path, and from there we walked the short distance to our car. Thus the first section of the day was done, and already this was more successful than expected." End quote. Thank you, Erik. Next week, The Road, Newtown Churchyard, and The Warren of the Snares. Anyway, let's see how Bigwig is getting on in Efrafa. Season 1, Episode 8, Escape from Efrafa. The 8th episode of the Watership Down TV series was first broadcast in the UK on the 16th of November 1999. It was written by Mary Crawford and Alan Templeton. There will be a link to the full episode on YouTube in the notes. This episode is part 2 of a single plot that began in episode 7. We open in a wood near Efrafa. A fox growls and sniffs the ground. One shot from the last episode is used again, minus the Watership Down rabbits, an interesting example of saving time in animation. As an aside, foxes only growl in this way when feeling directly threatened. A fox in this situation would be unlikely to make such a noise, and most of the sounds they do make are completely unlike dogs. The fox picks up a scent, but then looks in fear as it sees a fox skull at the base of a tree. In the distance, we see the twisted tree of Efrafa. The fox withdraws. In Efrafa, Bigwig is making his case for joining the Warren as part of his improvised plan to infiltrate the Warren. Primrose watches from a distance. He says he heard Woodwort is a leader of warriors. Asked where he comes from, he tells some of the truth by saying Sandalford, which he confirms in this series lies to the west, not the north, or on the path of the setting sun, as he puts it. He adds that it was destroyed by man. This triggers anger from Woodwort. Did this Bigwig know he would react to this? A noise he makes in reaction indicates possibly not. Woodwort asks if he is a warrior, could he fight Vervain? Vervain, the coward, reacts with alarm. Woodwort clearly still has it in for him after his recent desertion of Campion. Bigwig quickly knocks Vervain to the ground and offers to kill him. A smiling Woodwort says not today. Clearly satisfied as to his credentials, Woodwort appoints Bigwig as probationary captain of Owsla and places him under the supervision of Campion. Bigwig and Campion leave. Vervain is about to when Woodwort calls him back. He looks scared, but Woodwort has a task for him. He says Bigwig has an odd scent about him and tells Vervain to keep an eye on him. Vervain looks relieved. In the original novel, he was head of the dreaded Owslaffer or Council Police. This kind of task is right up his alley. Primrose withdraws as Vervain passes her. Blackavar says the guards are looking for her. It's time for Silflay. At the ruined stone bridge on the River Test, the rabbits of Watership Down are still staying concealed from 2 Efrafan sentries above. Hawkbit complains that hiding like this isn't very heroic. Hazel turns his attention to the boat. Blackberry says it is solid, and the rope holding it shouldn't take much to chew through when the time comes. She asks about Bigwig. They still have no idea what he is up to. Hazel comments that what they call foolish, Bigwig calls exciting. Back at Efrafa, Bigwig and Campion are discussing Efrafan discipline, while Vervain listens in. As they talk, with Bigwig not finding it too difficult pretending to be an authoritarian, they watch a regimented silflay in progress. Primrose, who is one of those eating grass by numbers, comments to Blackavar that there is something different about Bigwig. As they set off to tour the perimeter, the silflay ends, and as Primrose passes Bigwig, he quietly says to her that Hazel says hello. Once back in their burrow, she tells Blackavar and says they have to be ready. He is sceptical, but ever the optimist, she checks the escape tunnel. Blackavar wants to believe it is possible they could escape. Poking her head out of the escape tunnel, Primrose is almost caught as Vervain orders the sentry to come with him. Campion tells Bigwig, who realises they are being followed, that in Efrafa someone is always watching you. They come across the fox skull we saw at the start. Campion says it belonged to a fox who tried getting into Efrafa. No rabbits were lost in the fight that followed, and Woundwort ordered it placed there as a warning to others. Bigwig is beginning to realise what he's up against. Back at the bridge, one of the sentries is at Silflay, worryingly close to where the Watership Down rabbits are hiding. Campion calls him and berates both sentries for being off their post. Bigwig moves to the edge of the bridge and loudly states how much he will enjoy being in the Efrafan Owsla for the benefit of the listening Hazel. He adds, as Hazel shows himself below, that he has noticed some holes in security that he would like to discuss. Hazel nods. Before Campion can get curious, Bigwig goes back to the two sentries and has a go at them as well, ensuring they won't stray too far from the top of the bridge and helping his friends stay safe. Hazel and co would have no chance against an Efrafa where initiative is encouraged, but it very much is not. Vervain moves towards the bridge. Under the bridge, Hazel makes his plans. Blackberry is to stay with the boat and get it ready for escape. If they are not back by sunset, she is to leave without them. She says she will wait as long as it takes. Vervain is questioning the sentries on the bridge. Hazel hears him and asks Kihar how his precision flying is. Kihar says better than his. Above, Vervain and the sentries are about to check the bridge more closely, as Vervain seems unwilling to on his own, when Kihar flies at them, crying out loudly and chasing them away. Under the cover this provides, Hazel, Fiver and Hawkbit get away. Blackberry remains hidden under a cloth cover in the boat. Back in Efrafa, Campion leaves Bigwig to look around on his own as he has other work to do. He reminds him he is still on probation and not to try leaving. Bigwig practices bullying two guards, then comes across two pitiful rabbits whose spirit has been broken in the way Vervain described. He is moved by their appearance. Primrose signals to Bigwig to follow her. He meets Blackavar as well, and tells them Hazel sent him to get them out, which is not true in this version. He says they will need to get out without raising a fuss. Blackavar double-checks that Primrose is sure about Bigwig. She says she is, and shows him the tunnel. He says they will leave just before sunset, and goes to have one last look around the boundaries. Vervain is telling Woundwort that the gull that chased them away on the bridge was the same one who helped Hazel and Fiver escape, and the same one they saw in the woods before the fox attack. Woundwort speculates over the appearance of the gull coinciding with Bigwig joining the Owsla. He tells Vervain to find Bigwig and bring him to him. On the boundary of Efrafa, Bigwig encounters Hazel. They exchange information about the escape. Just before sunset and the location of the tunnel entrance, get to the bridge where there is a way to get clear. Just as Hazel leaves, Vervain turns up with two Owsla and, laughing, informs Bigwig he is under arrest. Before Woundwort, Bigwig responds to Vervain's accusation by making out that he is just using lies to tear him down as he can't beat him in combat. Knocking his guards aside, he flattens Vervain and raises a paw to strike him, but he is stopped by Campion, who urges him not to make it worse. Bigwig is restrained by the guards, and Woundwort lands heavily from his platform in front of the still quivering Vervain. Woundwort approaches Bigwig. He raises a paw and strikes. Vervain's look of pleasure turns to one of horror as he sees the 3 deep scratches on Bigwig's shoulder. Woundwort informs Bigwig that his probationary period is over. He is now Captain Bigwig of the shoulder mark. He says there is no fear in him, that if his loyalty matches his courage he'll do well in Efrafa, but if he betrays him, he'll grind his bones to dust. A shocked Vervain is placed on guard duty until further notice. Bigwig immediately uses his new mark to help prevent 2 Owlsler thugs from bullying a smaller rabbit. Outside, the sun is setting. Vervain relieves the guard near, guess where, the entrance to the escape tunnel. He asks if he has seen the gull. He has not. Nearby, Hazel and the others are waiting. Underground, Bigwig joins Primrose and Blackavar and says it is time to go. When they get in the open, they need to run like Elara. Above ground, Vervain is running to his guard post, looking at the sky for the gull. He, of course, falls into the escape tunnel and comes face to face with Bigwig, immediately sounding the alarm. Bigwig tells Primrose and Blackavar to move back quickly, kicking Vervain hard. The 3 escapees run headlong through Efrafa, reaching the main entrance where their way is blocked by 2 huge Owlsler. Campion emerges from a run. Woundwater appears on his platform, both in shock. Immediately, Bigwig knocks both guards out of the way and all 3 of them run into the open air. They climb out of the canyon and Bigwig sees Hazel. Then Primrose sees him, and they spend far too long staring into each other's eyes. Long enough for Vervain, Campion and Woundwort to climb out as well and recognise Hazel. Campion admits Vervain was right. Woundwort shouts to kill them all. The chase is on. Primrose and Hazel join Fiver, Hawkbit, Blackavar, Bigwig and Kihar. The escapees and pursuers all run past the Fox Skull. The pursuit is close. At the bridge, the Efrafan sentries are at their posts. Blackberry is in the boat. Ahead of the escaping rabbits, Kihar dives at the sentries, giving his friends a chance to get under the bridge to the boat. Blackberry starts chewing the rope holding the boat. Laughing, Woundwort says they are trapped. The Efrafans split up to cover both sides of the bridge. Under the bridge, only Hazel and Bigwig aren't in the boat. Hazel tells Blackberry to hurry up with the rope. Hazel and Bigwig reveal themselves to Campion and Vervain. Campion says he is sad it has to end this way. Looking at him in surprise, Vervain tells the other Efrafans to kill them. Blackberry gets through the rope. The boat starts to move. Fiver cries out to Hazel and Bigwig. They make a run for it. Campion and Vervain reach the river and see how they are getting away. Campion cries out that they are getting away on the river. Woundwort reaches the hole in the bridge above. Hazel and Bigwig make a leap for it, silhouetted by the setting sun, and land on the boat. Woundwort roars in rage. He leaps from the top of the bridge into the river, reaching the edge of the boat. He begins to climb aboard, only to be met by Bigwig's hind legs as he informs Woundwort they are full up and he will need to get his own boat. Woundwort is last seen flailing around in the river uselessly. Looking back, Bigwig says that all went rather well. Like falling down a hole, comments Hawkbit. Hazel and Primrose are left together. He tells her she doesn't need to be afraid anymore. They touch paws. She is free. They float away into the sunset. Is it canon? I forgot last week to detail the equivalent chapters in the novel covered by that episode, so for reference, episode 7 covers the equivalent of chapters 30, 32 and 33. This episode 8 covers chapters 34 to 38, but it does so in such a truncated and changed form that it would be wrong to declare any part of it as canon. However, within the terms of reference of this series, it is an effective bit of storytelling. We see Vervain and Campion at their worst, as well as the contrast of sadism versus blind loyalty that distinguishes their motivation. And it is quite satisfying to see Woundwort being kicked in the face and nearly drowning. But Hazel really has got to get a grip when Primrose is around. Hopefully now they are together, he will manage this. Next time, Primrose visits her original warren, and Fiver has one too many visions for Hawkbit's liking.